refers to the numbering of the children of Israel at the beginning of their journey in the wilderness and at the end of their journey in the wilderness. So the book of Numbers is really a history of the wandering of the children of Israel in the wilderness for 40 years. So Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus written near to Mount Sinai, and then the book of Numbers is written after they have wandered in the wilderness, because Numbers covers the history of the children of Israel throughout their 40-year wandering. Now, what of the book of Deuteronomy? The book of Deuteronomy means, as a PowerPoint says, second law. Someone read the PowerPoint for me.
But the Deuteronomy or Numbers?
Deuteronomy.
Okay, hold on. Okay.
And as we have questions, don't be afraid to ask.
1 second. Give me a second. Brother Enos?
Yes, sir.
Is there Robbie?
Ravi is going to come now, sir.
Okay.
Just 2 minutes later he will come. My son Isaac is here, sir.
Oh, okay. Let Isaac read this PowerPoint, and anybody can read the Bible. And yes, go ahead, Isaac.
Yes, sure I can.
Yeah, read it. The PowerPoint.
Deuteronomy means second law. That is, it's restatement of Moses' law recorded in Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers. Name comes from the Septuagint.
Septuagint. Okay, let me explain that. So the book of Deuteronomy is a repeat of the law that was given at Mount Sinai, as is recorded in the book of Exodus, Leviticus, and a bit in the book of Numbers. So it is really a repeat. Why is it a second law? Well, the book is written when the children of Israel are about to leave the wilderness and go into the promised land. Remember, those who left Egypt did not reach the promised land. They were not allowed to go to the promised land because of their disobedience. Turn with me to the book of Numbers, chapter 13.
Book of Numbers, chapter 13.
Numbers, chapter 13. From verse 17.
13,
Numbers chapter 13 from verse 17.
Yes.
So Moses sent them to spy out the land of Canaan and said to them, "Go up this way into the south and go up to the mountains." Shall I continue?
Continue.
And see what the land is like, whether the people who dwell in it are strong or weak, few or many, whether the land they dwell in is good or bad, whether the cities they inhabit are like camps or strongholds.
Okay, let's go now to verse 26. So they go into the land and they spy out the land, and then they come back and give a report to Moses and the children of Israel. Read.
26.
So they departed and came back to Moses and Aaron and all the congregation of the children of Israel in the wilderness of Paran at Kadesh. They brought back word to them and to all the congregation and showed them the fruit of the land. Then they told him and said, "We went to the land where you sent us. It truly flows with milk and honey, and this is its fruit. Never, uh, never, nevertheless, the people who dwell in the land are strong. The cities are fortified and very large. Moreover, we saw the descendants of Anak there. The the Amel the Amalekite dwell in the land of the south. The Hittites, the Jebusites, and the Amorites dwell in the mountains, and the Canaanites dwell by the sea and along the bank of the Jordan. Then then Caleb quickened
Then
then
Caleb.
Caleb quoted the people before Moses and said, "Let us go up at once and take possession, for we are well able to overcome it." But the men who had gone up with him said, "We are not able to go up against the people, for they are strong than we." And they gave the children of Israel a bad report of the land which they had spied out, saying, "The land through which we have gone as spies is a land that devours its inhabitants, and all the people whom we saw in it are men of great stature. There we saw the giants, the descendants of Anak came from the giants, and we were like grasshoppers in our own sight, and so we were
Okay.
in their
Okay, let's
sight."
stop there a moment. So God wanted them to spy out the land and then go into the land. But they came back, 10 of the 12 spies who went up into the land came back and said, "We can't conquer the land." Okay? And as a result of this, let's look at chapter 14 now.
Same book, chapter 14.
Then all
Verse
the
20.
congregation
Verse 20. Chapter 14, verse 20.
then the
So the
Lord
people
said,
rebelled against God, and God had a verdict. Verse 20, chapter 14.
"Shall I read it?"
Yeah.
Then the Lord said, "I have pardoned according to your word. But truly as I live, all the earth shall be filled with the glory of the Lord. Because all these men who have seen my glory and the signs which I did in Egypt and in the wilderness, and have put me to the test now, these 10 times I have and these 10 times and have not heeded my voice. They certainly shall not see the land of which I swore to their fathers, nor shall any of those who rejected me see it. But my servant Caleb, because he has a different spirit in him and has followed me fully, I will bring into the land where he went, and his descendants shall inherit it."
All right. So,
Now,
so what happened was that God allowed the adults who came out of Egypt to wander in the wilderness for 40 years and to die in the wilderness. And only Joshua and Caleb, out of the 12 spies who went into to spy out the land, they and their families were able to go into the promised land. So the book of Deuteronomy now is written to educate those children who left Egypt and are now grown up into adults in the wilderness. They were now being taught their history and their law in the book of Deuteronomy. So the book of Deuteronomy is a repeat law because it is now being repeated for the children who left Egypt because their parents had all now died in the wilderness. Is that clear?
Yeah. But
Okay.
let me ask them. Brother Enos,
Yes, sir.
could you ask everyone there what he said right now, that why these people were, people not able to cross that Jordan River, even Moses himself couldn't, and how he, Brother Gladwin explained it now. Can you ask them, anyone who understood what the brother Glavin asked.
Yes, sir.
This is very,
Yes,
very.
sir.
Huh?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, Brother Glavin.
Okay, let's go to the next slide.
Explanation.
Explanation.
Continue.
The law was first given within 2 years of the children of Israel leaving Egypt at the first portion of the wilderness journey. It is now given a second time to younger generation who had survived the wilderness. It was given just, just prior to their entry into the promised land.
Okay,
The book of,
continue.
the book of Deuteronomy. This book contains three parallel messages at the end of Moses' work as Israel's leader.
Continue.
The nature of the book. It wants, advises, encourages the children of Israel as they are about to enter the promised land. Note Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4, verse, verse 4 to 5. Because Jesus referred to this text as the
Okay, let's look at Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4 and 5.
Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4 and 5.
Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might.
Okay.
All right, good. And this is the same word. Look at Matthew chapter 22, verse 37 and 38.
Matthew 22, chapter 22, verse 27. Matthew 22, verse. Brother Kidu,
Yes, Matthew 22, verse 37 and 38.
37 and 38. Read it.
37.
Yeah. Chapter 22, verse 37 and 38.
Jesus answered, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and the most important commandment. Second most important commandment is like it. Love your neighbor as you love yourself.
Good.
And
Yes. Go
look
ahead.
at verse 40. Verse 40.
Yes. Go ahead.
The whole law of Moses and the teachings of the prophets depend on these two commandments.
Right. To love God and to love your neighbor. And that is really the teachings of God hang around those things. You love God, so you obey him, and you love your neighbor, so you treat him well. Okay, next slide.
Outline of the book.
Continue. Read it.
More on the book of Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4 and 5.
Okay,
It's a
let's
summary
look
of
at Deuteronomy chapter 1.
Deuteronomy chapter 1.
Let's look at the three discourses of Moses. So we're saying that the book of Deuteronomy contains three speeches, three messages. Look at Deuteronomy chapter 1, verse 1.
Read it.
in the
Yes. No.
in this book are the words that Moses spoke to the people of Israel when they were in the wilderness east of the river Jordan. They were in the Jordan valley near Suf.
Okay, let's stop there. So let's stop there. That's okay. These are the words which Moses spoke to all Israel on this side of the Jordan. So here we see the location of the children of Israel when the book was written. When the book was being written. In other words, these are the words that were spoken to the children of Israel at the Jordan. Where's the Jordan? The Jordan is on the other side of the wilderness. The Jordan is on the border of the promised land. They are about to go into the promised land, and these are the words which Moses spoke to the children of Israel as they were about to go into the promised land. Okay? Let's look at Deuteronomy chapter 4.
Deuteronomy
The
chapter
first
4.
message begins Deuteronomy chapter 1 and verse 1 and ends with Deuteronomy chapter 4 and verse 43.
Read it.
So let us back up a bit. Let's start from verse 32. So this is Moses' first speech. Okay, it ends with verse 43, but let's start from verse 32.
Search the past, the time before you were born, all the way back to the time when God created man on the earth. Search the entire earth. Has anything as great as this ever happened before? Has anyone ever heard of anything like this? Have any people ever lived after hearing a God speak to them from a fire as you have? Has any God ever dared to go and take a people from another nation and make them his own, as the Lord your God did for you in Egypt? Before your very eyes, he used his great power and strength. He brought pl- he brought plugs. He brought
Where are you?
yes. He brought plagues and worked miracle and wonders and caused terrifying things to happen. The Lord has shown you this, prove to you that He alone is God and that there is no other. He let you He let you hear His voice from heaven so that He could instruct you. And here on earth, He let you see His holy fire, and He spoke to you from it. Because He loved your ancestors, He chose you, and by His great power, He Himself brought you out of Egypt. As you advanced, He drove out nations greater and more powerful than you, so that He might bring you in, and give you their land, the land which still belongs to you. Remember today and never forget. The Lord is God in heaven and on earth. There is no other God. Obey all His laws that I have given you today, and all will give, and all will go well with you and your descendants. You will continue to live in the land which the Lord your God is giving you to be yours forever. Then Moses set aside 3 cities east of the river Jordan, to which a man could es- to which a man could escape and be safe if he had accidentally killed someone who had not been his enemy. He could escape to one of these cities and not to put to death. For the tribe of Reuben, there was the city of Bezar on the desert that due. For the tribe of Gad, there was Ramoth in, in territory of Gilead. And for the tribe of Manasseh, there was Golan in the territory of Bashan. Bashan.
Right. Okay. So notice what Moses says in his first speech at the end. Notice what he says. Look at verse 40. You shall therefore keep his statutes and commandments, which I command you today. that it may be well with you and your children after you. So he says, obeying the law of God, obeying the teachings of God is a blessing to you and your families. And he says, and that you may prolong your days in the land. Obeying the laws of God will allow you to remain in the land of Israel. Well, it turned out that the children of Israel did not obey God. And eventually, the northern kingdom was sent into Assyrian captivity, and the two tribes of the south, Judah and Benjamin, went into Babylonian captivity. But Moses is warning them, live by my command, by commands of God. God has shown you his power. Look at verse 38. Driving out from before you nations greater and mightier than you. In other words, God helped you to overcome. He has helped you and he will help you. All you have to do is to remain faithful to God. And that applies to us today. Serve God, obey his teachings, and God will bless you. If you depart from God, then God will remove his blessings. Okay, let's look now at the second lesson from verse 44. Now let us look at verse 44. Read from verse 44 of chapter 4.
Moses gave God's laws and teaching to the people of Israel. It was after they had to come out of Egypt and were in the valley east of the river Jordan, opposite the town of Beth-peor, that he gave them these laws. This was in the territory that had belonged to King Sihon of the Amorites, who had ruled in the town of Heshbon. Moses and the people of Israel defeated him when they came out of Egypt. They occupied his land and the land of kings Ozi of Bashan, the other Amorite king who lived east of the Jordan. This land extended from the town of Aror on the edge of the river Arnon, all the way north to Mount Sirion, that is Mount Hermon. It also included all the region east of the river Jordan, as far south as the Dead Sea, and east to the foot of Mount Pisgah.
Pisgah. Okay, somebody else read now. In chapter 5, we read of the repeat of the 10 commandments. We read of the giving of the 10 commandments a second time. In other words, the 10 commandments was first given at Mount Sinai, and now it is being given near the banks of the Jordan River. Why? Because the children of those who left Egypt are now getting the law. Their parents had been given the law at Mount Sinai. No, they were now going to be given that law near the Jordan River. Someone else read chapter 5 and verse 1. Any of the sisters would like to read? Anybody can read.
Chapter 5 with verse.
Chapter 5 from verse 1.
And Moses called all Israel and said to them, Hear, O Israel, the statutes and the judgments which I speak in your hearing today, that you may learn them and be careful to observe them.
Right, so he says, these are the statutes and the judgments which I speak in your hearing today. And you are hearing them, you must learn them, and be careful to observe them. So when we hear the word of God, it was not come in one ear and come out the other. When we hear the word of God, God wants us to obey. Obedience is very, very important as a Christian. And God was saying obedience was important to the Israelites before God. He said, you hear them, you hear my commands, you learn them, and you're careful to observe them. Verse 2.
The Lord our God made a covenant with us in Horeb Horeb.
Mount Horeb.
The
Continue.
Lord, the Lord did not make this covenant with our father, but with us, those who are uh, here today, all of us who are alive.
Read on.
The Lord talks with you face to face on the mountain from the midst of the fire. I stood between the Lord and you at that time to declare to you the word of the Lord. For you were afraid because of the fire, and you did not go up the mountain. He said,
Right. So here it is. Who is talking here? Who is talking? Who is speaking in
Lord,
this text?
the Lord,
Who?
Lord, God is speaking.
Moses. Look at verse 1. Moses.
Moses.
In verse 1 it says, and Moses called all Israel and said to them. So it's Moses who is talking here now. Moses is the one who got the law at Mount Sinai. And he's saying, Moses called all Israel and said to them, hear, O Israel, the statutes and judgments that I speak to you in your hearing today. Right? The Lord our God made a covenant with us in Horeb. Where's Horeb? Horeb is the mountain range where you found Mount Sinai. So Moses is the historian. Moses is saying, 30 odd years ago, I went up to Mount Sinai and I got the law from God. So God made a covenant with us nearly 40 years before, right? And this was made at Mount Horeb, right? And he says, look at verse 5, I stood between the Lord and you. When did that happen? At Mount Sinai, at Mount Horeb. I stood between the Lord and you at that time to declare to you the word of the Lord. So he's saying, I first got this law 40 years ago when I was at Mount Horeb. I received the law. I received the law. And you did not go up the mountain. I went up to the mountain. And this is the law I got when I went up to the mountain. Verse 6. Someone read verse 6.
I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You shall have no other God for me. You shall not make for yourself any carved image
All right,
or
let's stop there. When he says, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. When he says house of bondage, what does he mean? What happened when they were in Egypt? When they were in Egypt, they were slaves. The children of Israel were turned into slaves by the Egyptians. So it is God who sent down Moses to Egypt. And through Moses, he performed 10 plagues, which eventually convinced Pharaoh to set the people free from slavery. But before they were set free out of slavery, God had to convince Pharaoh to let the people go. So he says, I am the Lord our God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of bondage. Therefore, you shall have no other gods before me. In other words, do not worship any other gods. Verse 8.
you shall not make for yourself any carved image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the Lord beneath, or that is in the water under the earth.
Continue.
You shall not go down to them or serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am a furious God, visiting the iniquity of the father upon the children to to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me.
Continue.
Bestowing mercy to thousands to those who love me and keep my commandments.
Right.
You
So
shall
he says, there's one God, and you shall not make any graven image. In other words, you mustn't make any wooden statues or made out of metal, anything that looks like a cow or a goat, or any image at all. You mustn't make any carved out, engraven image, because God is a spirit, and God is not some wooden image that we have in various parts of the world. You know, some people are still having their gods as an image. He said, you shall have no other God but me. All right. So he was warning them against images, carved images. Verse 11.
You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain.
Right. In other words, you should not use the Lord's name to curse or to slander or to use it foolishly. In other words, to use it in an empty or vain manner is when people curse and use the Lord's name. They say, don't do it. Verse 12.
Observe the Sabbath day to keep it holy, as the Lord your God commanded you.
Continue.
6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall not do any. You should not do any work. You or nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your manservant, nor your maidservant, nor your ox, not your donkey, not any of your cattle, not your stranger who is within your gate, that your manservant and your maidservant may rest as well as you.
Yes, continue.
And remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and that the Lord your God brought you out from there by a mighty hand and by any outstretched arm, before the Lord your God commanded you to keep the Sabbath day.
All right. So here's what he's saying. He's saying that the Sabbath day was given because, verse 15, remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and the Lord your God brought you out there by a mighty hand, by his outstretched arm. Therefore, the Lord commanded you to keep the Sabbath. Therefore, the Sabbath day was not commanded from the Garden of Eden. The Sabbath day was given as a result of the fact that they were slaves in Egypt. So the Sabbath day was made known to the children of Israel after they came out of Egypt. It was made known to them at Mount Sinai for the first time. Why? Because they were slaves in Egypt. In other words, the Sabbath day was not commanded to Abraham or Noah or Cain and Abel or Adam and Eve or any of the characters in the book of Genesis. The Sabbath day was not a command in Genesis. The Sabbath day is made known about the time of Mount Sinai. And it was made known to those who were slaves in Egypt. Okay. Let's look at the lessons from the book. PowerPoint.
Outline a book. Isaac.
PowerPoint.
Isaac. PowerPoint.
Outline of the book. On Moses' three messages. Moses' Moses' first discourse, Deuteronomy chapter 1,
Yeah.
verse 1 to chapter 4, verse 43. Moses' second discourse, Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 44, and chapter 26, verse
No, I
19.
want you to go to a slide that says lessons from the book. Lessons from the book. Next slide. Lessons from the book.
Go ahead.
Lessons from the book. The book presents the unity of God. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 4 to 9. Deuteronomy chapter 11, verse 13 to 21. Numbers chapter 15, verse 37 to 41. Israel is God's chosen people. Chapter 2, verse 26. Sorry, 66. A lesson from Moses' failure to reach the promised land. Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 51 and 52. Numbers.
All right, let's look at Deuteronomy chapter 11 from verse 13.
Deuteronomy 11.
Deuteronomy 11 from verse 13.
So then, obey the commands that I have given you today. Love the Lord your God and serve him with all your heart. If you do, he will send rain on your land when it is needed, in the autumn and in the spring, so that there will be corn, wine, and olive oil for you, and grass for your livestock. You will have all the food you want. Do not let yourself be led away from the Lord to worship and serve other gods. If you do, the Lord will become angry with you. He will He will hold back the rain, and your ground will become too dry for crops to grow. Then you will soon die there, and then you will soon die there, even though it is good land that He is giving you. Remember these commands and cherish them. Tie them on your arms and wear them on your foreheads as a reminder. Teach them to your children. Talk about them when you are at home and when you are away, when you are resting and when you are working. Write them on the doorposts of your houses and on your gates. Then you and your children will live a long time in the land that the Lord your in the land that the Lord your God promised to give you to the ancestors. You will live there as long as there is a sky above the earth.
All right.
Obey
Let's go to the PowerPoint. PowerPoint. Israel is God's chosen people. Read on.
It is on. Shall I continue? Israel is God's chosen people. Chapter 2, verse 66. The lesson from the Moses' failure to reach the promised land. Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 51 and 52. Numbers chapter 20, verse 2 to 13. He dishonored God, disobeyed God, showed lack of faith in God. We see too that God is no respecter of persons.
All right. Read on.
Read on.
Yes.
Next.
PowerPoint.
PowerPoint.
Next, I have already completed. From this point onwards, the Pentateuch has ended. The law has been received. The people have been encouraged to remember and to be faithful to the teachings that God has made known to them. Next, the children of Israel are about to enter a wonderful period in their history as they enter the promised land, Canaan.
Oh, dog. Dog.
Conclusion.
Huh? Dog fighting.
Here concludes.
Conclude. Conclusion.
Conclusion. Here concludes the Pentateuch or Torah. The people have been given the law and are no longer expecting new truth. They have been encouraged to be faithful to the revealed teaching from Jehovah given through Moses. Children of Israel are about to enter the promised land.
Okay, let's conclude Deuteronomy by reading Deuteronomy chapter 33. Deuteronomy chapter 33.
Same book?
33.
30 verse.
From verse 1.
These are the blessings that
so
Moses...
here we see Moses is about to die, and he blesses the children of Israel. Read.
These are the blessings that Moses, the man of God, pronounced on the people of Israel before he died.
Before he
The
died.
Lord...
So these are the words of Moses before Moses dies, because Moses did not get to go to the promised land. So these are the words before his death. Before his death. Okay. Read.
What?
The Lord came. The Lord came from Mount Sinai. He rose like a sun over Edom and shone on his people from Mount Paran.
Now, why did Moses not go to the promised land? Anybody knows?
Huh?
Why did Moses not get to go to the promised land? Let's find out. Eh? Let's find out. Deuteronomy, Numbers chapter 20 and verse 10 and 11 and 12. Numbers chapter 20 verse 10 to 12.
He then said, You shall not pass through. So Edom came out against them with many men and with a strong hand. Thus Edom refused to see Israel's passage through his territories, so Israel turned away from them.
Are you reading from Numbers 20 and verse 10? Numbers 20 and verse 10?
No.
Numbers 20.
Numbers 20.
20 and verse 10.
Sanju.
Numbers
Yes,
20
sir.
and verse 10.
Yes. It is.
We are finding out why Moses never reached the promised land. Numbers 20 and verse 10 to 12.
And Moses and Aaron gathered the congregation together before the rock, and he said to them, Here now, you river, must we bring water for you out of this rock?
Read on.
Then Moses dipped his hand and struck the rock with his rod, and water came out abundantly, and the congregations and their animal drank. Then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, Because you did not believe me to follow me in the eye of the children of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this congregation into the land which I have given them.
Right. In other words, God had told them, verse 7, the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Take the rod, you and your brother Aaron, gather the congregation together, speak to the rock before their eyes, and it shall yield water. Thus you shall bring water for them out of the rock. But what did Moses do? Instead of speaking to the rock, Moses struck the rock. He struck the rock. And God said, Because you did not believe me. Well, what do you mean you didn't believe him? Well, when you believe, you obey.
Yeah. Do you believe?
So faith comes by hearing, hearing by the word of God. When you believe, you obey what God says. So God told him to speak to the rock, but Moses struck the rock twice and showed his lack of obedience, his lack of faith. And God says, because you did not believe me, because if you believe me, you would have obeyed what I said. And hallow me. What does hallow mean? Respect, honor. You show respect for God by obeying him. But he showed his disrespect for God by disobeying him. So because you did not believe me and hallow me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the land which I have given you. In other words, you will not go into the promised land. And therefore Moses ended up giving his sermon before his 3 sermons before his death. He did not go to the promised land. So let's go down to Deuteronomy 33 and verse 2. Deuteronomy 33 and verse 2.
All right. Deuteronomy 32.
And he said, the Lord came from Sinai, and camped on them from there. He stone forth from Mount Paran, and he came with 10,000 of men. From his right hand came a very law for them. Very law.
Read, continue.
Yes, he loves the people all his land has in his hand. They sit down at your feet. Everyone receive your words. Moses committed a law for us, a heritage of the congregations of Jacob. And he was
Okay, let's now
privileged.
go to chapter 34. We conclude by reading chapter 34. Someone read chapter 34.
Verse
1.
Moses went up from the plains of Moab, Mount Nebo, to the top of Mount Pisgah, east of Jericho. And there the Lord showed him the whole land, the territory of Gilead, as far north as the town of Dan, the entire territory of Naphtali, the territories of Ephraim and Manasseh, territory of Judah, as far west as the Mediterranean, uh, Mediterranean Sea, the southern part of Judah, and the plain that reaches from the Zor to Jericho, the city of palm trees. Then the Lord said to Moses, this is the land that I promised Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob I would give to their descendants. I have let you see it, but I will not let you go there. So Moses, the Lord's servant, died there in the land of Moab, as the Lord had said he would. The Lord buried him in a valley in Moab, opposite the town of Beth Beth Peor. Beth Peor. But to the but to this day, no one knows the exact place of his burial. Moses was 120 years old when he died. He was as strong as ever, and his eyesight was still good. The people of Israel mourned, mourned for him, and, and 30 days in the plains of Moab. Joshua, son of Nun, was filled with wisdom because Moses had appointed him to be his successor. People of Israel obeyed Joshua and kept the commands that the Lord had given them through Moses. There, there has never been a prophet in Israel like Moses. The Lord spoke with him face to face. No other prophet has ever done miracles and wonders like those that the Lord sent Moses to perform against the king of Egypt, his officials, and the entire country. No other prophet had no other prophet has been able to do the great terrifying things that Moses did in the sight of all Israel.
All right. Any questions?
What happened, sound? What happened, sound?
Hello?
Hello, what
We
happened?
are,
Ajur,
Ajay, we are unable to hear you, uncle.
what happened, sound?
Sir, in the gliding, sir, sites or something problem happened, I think.
Hold on, just a minute. Yeah. You were bad. You were bad. So, are you guys Gujarat Raja?
Ajay, uncle.
Okay.
Yeah, what have we learned from this lesson today? Anybody?
Yeah, they understand me. Yeah, they understand me well.
What have you learned from this lesson from the book of Deuteronomy today?
Okay. उहाँको प्रश्न सर एक्चुअली सबलाई भनिदिनुहोस् न उहाँको प्रश्नको बारेमा यो व्यवस्थाको किताबबाट हामीले के सिक्यौँ भनेर
Go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah, we got here that uncle. Moses he disobeyed Lord, and so he was not able to go to the promised land. And in that time, there was no one like Moses. Like God used to talk to Moses face to face. So, and there was no person like Moses.
Okay. Moses was although there was no one like Moses, God is no respecter of persons because Moses was disobedient, he did not allow him to go to the promised land. And that shows you that God expects obedience from everybody. So when Moses was disobedient, although there was no prophet like him, he never reached the promised land. So that's a lesson for us today. That we should walk according to the teachings of Almighty God. What else? Anybody else?
No.
Any of the ladies?
Huh?
The ladies?
Oh, from the ladies? Okay, sir, दिदी बहिनीहरुको तर्फबाट केही भन्नु छ कि?
Yeah.
Moses प्रभुको विश्वास राखेको थियो उहाँ प्रभुको भनेको वचनको अनुसार हिँड्नुभयो र उहाँ त्यस्तो कोही पनि थिएन उहाँ जहाँ प्रमिस प्रभुले उहाँलाई डराउनु भएको थियो प्रमिसले जग्गा त्यो जग्गामा पुग्नु पाउनु भएन अनि उहाँ
Dave?
Yeah.
I'm not hearing properly. Too much noise on the side for some reason. Yeah, go ahead.
Brother Enos will translate. Brother Enos.
Yes, sir.
Please translate. Please translate for her.
Yeah, she's saying same thing as Isaac said that Moses obeyed the command of God, and he was the person like Moses. There was nobody at the time, but he couldn't enter the promised land because of his disobedience to God. That's what he's saying.
Yes. Okay. All right. Well, next week we'll continue our lesson, and thank you for your participation. Please read through the book of Deuteronomy and read through the book of Joshua for next week. That's your assignment.
Okay.
Read the book of
Thank you so much.
Deuteronomy. Read the book of Joshua. Let us
Thank you,
pray.
sir.
Almighty God, give us a good night's rest. Give us a good Lord's Day. Thank you for this class. Bless the brethren, oh Father, in India. Help them to have a blessed day of worship as we pray in the name of worship. In the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
God bless you. God bless you.
Bless you.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
sir.
God bless you.
Bless
Thank you so much.
All right. So we had a wonderful book of Deuteronomy class was wonderful. भनेको मतलब हो पढ्दाखेरि बुझ्दैछ पढेन भने हामी बुझ्दैन त्यही हो नि त कुरो अन्तमा
हजुर सर
के अरे इनो सर पढ्यौँ भने बुझ्दैछ पढेन भने बुझ्दैनौँ त्यही हो नि त कुरो पढ्यौँ भने बुझ्दैछौँ पढेन भने बुझ्दैछौँ That's all in conclusion. Okay, it was good. It was good. अनि त्यो के अरे तपाईको स्पिकर के अरे अझै फिक्स भएको छैन हैन
भएको छैन सर अहिले हामी ट्राई गर्दैछ
ट्राई अब गर्नुहुन्छ अब
हजुर
ओके
आई थिंक माइ सन क्यान ट्राई द्याट
हजुर
आइसरले ट्राई गर्न सक्छ होला सर